One reason to look at the Manicouagan-Uapishka Biosphere Reserve is to study a species that's of tremendous importance to the Pessamit and many other indigenous nations throughout the continent, the woodland caribou. Despite its history of forestry and hydroelectric development, the area around the Manicouagan Reservoir is home to a small but stable caribou population. That's significant because across Canada, more than 80% of the boreal forest populations of this species are in serious decline, largely due to habitat loss and disturbances related to natural resource extraction and forest fires. To help the woodland caribou, the Canadian government has listed it as a species at risk and committed resources to its recovery. Those include research to improve our understanding of the habitat of this elusive animal so it can be better protected in the future. That's what's drawn scientists from the Canadian government agency responsible for forest industry research, the Canadian Forest Service, to Uapishka Station.
We're trying to characterize its habitat by characterizing its food source. So where are the best habitat in terms of food source for the animal?
Learning what parts of the boreal forest grow the most caribou food means getting up close and personal with lichens. André Arsenault is a lichenologist. Part of his job on this research project is to get his colleagues from the Canadian Forest Service up to speed on lichens, so they can properly identify these unusual organisms in the field.
Lichens are a symbiosis. So in this case, you have a fungi that's in relationship with an algae. And if you would look at the fungi and the algae separately, they would look completely different. But when they lichenize, they form this beautiful structure. Although they are toxic to a lot of organisms, there are some organisms that have specialized in actually eating lichens. And if you look at the caribou, it's one of their major food source. So that's one of the reasons we're here, actually try to understand how these reindeer lichens are distributed, to understand where would be really good areas for caribou and not so good areas.
The Canadian Forest Service is just beginning this 4-year project. As lichens are not something the Forest Service has historically paid much attention to, the first job is to figure out how to sample them.
Most of the colleagues I'm working with didn't have a lot of experience with lichens, so part of the idea was to try to work on what would be the optimal method to capture the biomass and diversity of lichens. And I think we nailed it, so that's good.
Next year, we'll do more intensive sampling, and in 3 or 4 years, we'll have conclusion about what is the best habitat for the caribou.
Having Uapishka Station as a base of operations makes this kind of long-term field research much easier to carry out.
It takes 10 hours from Quebec City to drive here. So having a station here with research facility is highly positive because we can sleep here, eat, and we bring a lot of sample from the forest so we can use the lab space too.
The Canadian Forest Service Caribou Study is the kind of research the Pessamit and the Biosphere Reserve were hoping to encourage with the Uapishka Station. The results may lead to changes in forestry practices so the industry can better coexist with caribou in the Biosphere Reserve and beyond.
My colleagues and I, although we do some research which could be considered a little bit more fundamental, the ultimate goal is always to try to inform planners, managers, governments, and now our colleagues with First Nations about what's the optimal way to sustainably manage our forests for the future.